Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. It's your girl Mercy and I'm back here with another video. If you're new, welcome. We talk about all things faith, fashion, lifestyle, and beauty, and I'm so glad that you're joining me today. As you can tell by the title, we'll be talking about friendship with God. And per my last video, I mentioned that, I would just be sharing some revelation that I have been receiving from my daily devotions with God. And today, I really love this because it really spoke to me personally about just being God's friend. And if you know that song, if you grew up in church, I'm a friend of God. Yeah, it just brought so much more depth and meaning to that. When I hear that song, it just brings so much more depth and meaning to it. But yeah, we're going to be reading out of Numbers again today, chapter 14, and we're going to start in verse 10. And just before I start, let me give some background because I'm not going to start from the beginning. But basically where we are in the text is that the people of Israel are now right before the promised land. They've sent out the scouts to spy the land and figure out what's going on over there, how they need to approach. And Joshua and Caleb come back with the 10 spies. Those two, they're like, yeah, let's take the land. God's going to give us the power if that's his will, whatever. And the other 10 spies decided that they're going to spread a bad report. They're fearful and they're scared of the giants that live in the land and they feel like grasshoppers, and the people chose to believe their report instead of Joshua and Caleb's. And so now, Joshua and Caleb, they're trying to convince them that this land is good. It's a land flowing with milk and honey, and the people are literally complaining, wishing that they had just died in Egypt, complaining against Moses, complaining against God. And so here we're picking up in verse 10, chapter 14. But the whole community began to talk about stoning Joshua and Caleb. Then the glorious presence of the Lord appeared to all the Israelites at the tabernacle. And the Lord said to Moses, "How long will these people treat me with contempt? Will they never believe me, even after all the miraculous signs I have done among them? I will disown them and destroy them with a plague. Then I will make you into a greater and mightier nation than they are." But Moses objected. "What will the Egyptians think when they hear about it?" he asked the Lord. "They know full well the power you displayed in rescuing your people from Egypt. Now, if you destroy them, the Egyptians will send a report to the inhabitants of this land who have already heard that you live among your people. They know, Lord, that you have appeared to your people face to face, and that your pillar of cloud hovers over them. They know that you go before them in the pillar of cloud by day and the pillar of fire by night. Now, if you slaughter all these people with a single blow, the nations that have heard of your fame will say, 'The Lord was not able to bring them into the land he swore to give them, so he killed them in the wilderness.' Please, Lord, prove that your power is as great as you have claimed, for you said, 'The Lord is slow to anger and filled with unfailing love, forgiving every kind of sin and rebellion. But he does not excuse the guilty. He lays the sins of the parents upon their children. The entire family is affected, even children in the third and fourth generations. In keeping with your magnificent, unfailing love, please pardon the sins of this people, just as you have forgiven them ever since they left Egypt.' Then the Lord said, 'I will pardon them as you have requested.'" Whew. So hopefully you have your Bibles and you've read along with me, because that was Numbers chapter 14, verse 10 through 20. And so the first thing that stood out to me, we can just carry this along like Bible study. The first thing that stood out to me was that the Lord asked Moses 2 questions. And it's not because he didn't know the answer. If you're familiar with studying the Bible, anytime God asked a question, it was not because he did not know the answer. So my question is, why did he ask Moses, "How long will these people treat me with contempt? Will they never believe me?" And the reason I wrote down was because God confided in Moses. He found him a friend in Moses. And so when you have a friend, you confide in them, you express your frustrations, you express your emotions, you express your heart concerning whatever matter you're facing. And I believe that's what the Lord was doing here in this text. So now, why Moses? What made him such a friend? And 3 things I wrote down. The first one I wrote that he was humble and selfless. So if we look back at verse 12, right after God asked Moses these questions, he said, I will disown them and I will destroy them with a plague. Then I will make you, talking to Moses, into a nation greater and mightier than they are. But here's the thing. In verse 13 it says, but Moses objected. And now here's the thing. This wasn't the first time that God told this to Moses. This is not the first time that God threatened to destroy the people of Israel and make Moses into a great nation. So now we have Moses has denied himself twice. Think about the position that he's in. Think about all the traveling through the wood. Like, it's been 40 years almost up to this point, if not more. But Moses has been through so much. These people have complained against him. They've complained and complained and complained. They rebelled. They've tried to overthrow him. They've tried to stone him. Like, he had every right to be like, yeah, Lord, kill these people. I'm good. I'll take that. I'll take up that offer. And he denied himself. He fell to his face. Anytime the Lord threatened the people, Moses fell to his face and interceded for them. And I just think that's the most humble and selfless thing that anyone as a leader could do. And so, he denied himself that offer for God to make him into a greater and mightier nation. And not only did he do it once, he did it twice. So, yes. The next thing is he was loyal and trustworthy. So as soon as, Moses objected, he says, what will the Egyptians think when they hear about it? So he's concerned. He's reminding God as we read down to verse 17. He says, please, Lord, prove that your power is as great as you have claimed. For you said, the Lord is slow to anger and filled with unfailing love, forgiving every kind of sin and rebellion. So he's now reminding God of his character and his word. And according to Psalms 138 verse 2, we know that the Lord esteems his word above his name, which means he holds his word above all things. And so when Moses reminds him of his word, then the Lord is like, oh, I did say that. You know what I'm saying? So, and this is even a great tool, in how to pray and how to make your requests to God. Remind him of his word. But to remind him of his word, that means you have to know his word. And so, yes, Moses was loyal and trustworthy because he knew God's character and he reminded him of his character. He knew his word and he reminded him of his word. Not only was Moses loyal and trustworthy, humble and selfless, but he also cared for and protected the reputation of God's name. And so, like I said, in verse 13, he's asking, what will the Egyptians say when they hear about it? He says, now if you destroy them, the Egyptians will send a report to the inhabitants of this land who have already heard that you live among your people. He says, now if you slaughter all these people with a single blow, the nations that have heard of your fame will say, the Lord was not able to bring them into the land he swore to give them, so he killed them in the wilderness. Now that's a friend. Someone, when you are in anger and you are enraged and upset and ready to act on your anger, someone who's gonna pull you back in and remind you of who you are and what you already said, and remind you of the words that you've spoken so that you do not sin against your own self, basically. That's the kind of friend that you want. And that's the kind of friend that Moses was to God. And so I just thought this was such an interesting text. And it stood out to me so much. Because when we sing that song, I am a friend of God, like, we don't really think about the context and the depth to that title, friend. Because, in this day and age, we throw friend around so easily. That it's just another word. But those are three things that, made Moses such a friend to the Lord. And one thing I want to mention is that Moses actually did disobey God. And it's further on in Numbers 20, when God asked Moses to speak to the rock so that the water would gush out so the people would be able to drink from the rock. But instead he struck the rock. And if you go back to Exodus chapter 17, that was the first time God commanded Moses to strike the rock. And so this time he commanded Moses to speak to the rock because the people needed a new measure of faith. But because he disobeyed God, he shared his glory, and God doesn't share his glory with any man. And so because he did not speak to the rock, that did not allow God to get the full glory, and that did not allow the faith of the people to be increased, because they've already seen him strike the rock before. They needed something new, something different. So Moses disobeyed God. And even after Moses disobeyed him, he still was faithful and merciful in showing Moses, leading him up a mountain to show him the promised land before he died. And this you can see in Deuteronomy chapter 34. So what does friendship with God mean? Friendship with God means having a defender when you aren't present. And this I'm referring to Numbers chapter 12, when Moses' brother and sister, Miriam and Aaron, were basically complaining about him behind his back, and God intercepted the conversation. Yeah, so God was basically like, you should be scared to put his name in your mouth, because I speak to him face to face. What about you? He collected them real quick. And so when we are walking with God, we're friends with God, he defends us when we are not there. And a lot of people don't lean into that. A lot of people feel like they have to defend themselves all the time. They always gotta, come at their aggressors and all that stuff. But God defends his people. God defends his friends. And so, yeah. Another thing, friendship with God means sharing his heart and his emotions, and loving what he loves, hating what he hates, empathizing with what he empathizes with and who he empathizes with. And for me, I can speak to this personally because there are times that I've woken up with such a heavy heart. There's times that I've woken up with so much uncontainable joy. And it's literally God sharing his heart and his emotions with you because you are his friend. You are his friend. And so the last thing I have here is friendship with God means he listens to and answers your requests. He values your thoughts and your opinions. Now, at the end of chapter 14, verse 20, he says, "Then the Lord said, I will pardon them as you have requested." And that just goes to show you that the Lord hears when we make our requests and we make our petitions. As long as it is in alignment with his will, he will respond and he will answer and he will give us what we need. And so, yeah, that is today's video. And I just want to say, it has been a rough week. It has been hard to really sit and study the word and pray. And I know that many of you are feeling that way as well. So please do not feel discouraged. I pray that this video is a motivation for you to pick back up your Bible and really want to study it and want to sit with God and get that revelation for your own life. And yeah, I pray this video blessed you. And I pray that I'll see you guys back here next week.